Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, and this is a Champions League only episode. Get ready. We're going to figure out how to make some money here. Thank you for all the support, whether you're on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button, like this video if it also is interesting to you. If you're on Apple or Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It would really help. And if I get some nice ones, I will read them on the podcast. If you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, as you probably know, the real underscore G Warner. Please hit the follow button there. And if you're on StreamYard, I'm not sure if anyone goes there. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but at least it gets a video of me going live on Twitter. So looking forward to, I guess, some big matches coming up. We start the quarterfinal round of the Champions League. We got 2 legs starting, and that's what we're going to go through today. Also don't want to forget to mention my Patreon. If you're a pregame.com subscriber or user, or you're finding my picks on there, I'm telling you, it's a better experience for a lot less money. So I would check. All I can say, run out of words, but check it out. Patreon.com/real underscore G Warner. It is, I think, a great bang for your buck. You get all the picks, everything I'm leaning, and that might help you make some informed decisions that you're making, maybe find plays to come off of, to be on, or all sorts of things. Try to get my plays out there so that everyone can understand what's coming. And I'm trying to get a little bit better with putting them out there earlier, because unfortunately I realized that not everyone is holding onto their phone waiting for a notification that I updated Patreon. But on this episode, we're going to go through Champions League. I'm going to have a best bet for each of the days and an ultimate best bet. Let's see. Is there anything else that we need to do before we get started? I don't think so. So without further ado, it's late night Monday per usual, now to Tuesday. But we're getting it out there. We're getting it going. And all lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please use the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Okay, so going to go through the 2 advanced lines as well as the spreads and totals for this first leg. Of course, any feedback, questions, concerns, feel free to slide in the DMs on Patreon, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you're seeing this. I will try my best to keep my eyes open and make sure that if you send me something, I will respond to it. But without further ado, let's get into the Tuesday matches. Or I guess only I'm trying to do is open up something on my other computer so that I make sure that I'm tracking all this so I can easily get to the ultimate best bet. But we'll start with Benfica hosting Inter Milan. Currently, Benfica a quarter goal favorite. I've been tracking these lines for a little while, so I might as well give some line history as well. I was very surprised, honestly, to see Inter and kind of what this line kind of looked like. So when I was initially building it, I was expecting Benfica would be an underdog. They opened a quarter goal favorite, climbed all the way up to a half a goal favorite. Have since come down to a quarter goal favorite with a little bit more juice right now. The over under is 2.25, juiced to the under slightly. But I think I was really surprised, as you probably could just understand from me saying that, to see Inter Milan an underdog. And a Serie A team, maybe, ultimately a Serie A team going to a non-top 5 European soccer league. I do think the Liga Portugal, if you've been listening to this, I'm a believer that it's a strong league, but ultimately it's really surprising that they are favored, Benfica are, to Inter Milan, though Benfica and the La Liga Portugal has been so good in this competition. Kind of sad that Porto didn't get here. Inter Milan just knocked them out, but Benfica got a pretty good draw to get to this round, of course. But I feel like they've been deserving. Their play's been good. Last year they knocked out Ajax, who was perfect in the group stage. Really good side, a team I really wanted to back, and I was hoping to get them as an underdog, but clearly was not so lucky. And what that does is, as an underdog player and an under total player, it does force me to look at both of those sides, or I guess that side and that total. And I guess I might as well just go over the 2 advanced numbers while I have them, or while I have you here. Sorry, Johan's late night. So line hasn't moved the two advanced number at Bet Online since the 2nd of April when I was initially looking at this. Benfica, a minus 120 favorite, Inter Milan, even money to go through. I feel like this is probably going to close something similar here, considering there hasn't been much movement. Inter have not been playing very well, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I feel like a lot of money might hit the books if Inter were all of a sudden given a little bit more than even money to advance. And I think that's what's keeping this line here, because I generally think that favorites, especially home favorites in that first leg, that you might see a little bit more money coming in on them. But I do think there's some value in Inter right now, because I think that, I mean, clearly they're the bigger club. They have spent more money on their transfers. But as I kind of just said, they haven't been playing very well in Serie A. The nice part is a lot of times, especially for Inter, this competition is perfectly good for them to play really well, even if they're struggling in the league. There's a lot of concerns for Inter, of course. And I mean, I think even talk of not even qualifying for a Champions League position has been talked about, and that's concerning, especially with Simone Inzaghi likely, I think, not coming back to Inter next season. But he had a really, I mean, really hard to follow Antonio Conte winning Serie A. Really hard to do. They probably should have won it last year, but kind of choked it up late. Benfica on the other side, I mean, I don't think they're a better team than Inter Milan. I do think that at home, general quarter goal home spread for two teams that are equal says something, but it even says a little bit more that they were up to minus 1/2 when I was tracking this before. Plus, they're more juiced right now at the minus 1/4 at home than Inter Milan are on the road. So as this climbs, the more interested I get Inter Milan. I feel like Benfica really is going to, I think, still defer to Inter. I mean, they of course want us to win this match because it's really important for them to get a home result, not just a draw, but to win at home, really. And a lopsided win would be more important than that. But I don't know that Benfica are really going to play that way. I feel like they're still a counter-attacking team. I think they will let Inter Milan have the ball. I think Inter on the other side want to be a counter-attacking team, and I think they're just as comfortable going the road, which makes me, especially because they're rarely an underdog, it makes me very interested in backing them there. They've had good success. I mean, they beat Napoli coming out of the international break for the World Cup, which was saying something because it's a long time ago now, and they've been playing really poorly. But we're really right there with Juventus. Got a late penalty for a draw in the Coppa Italia, lost a really tight match with Inter Milan in the league right before that. That might point to the under 2.25 as the strongest of any possibilities here ultimately, because like I said, I think both teams want to counterattack, and that usually means that there's a stalemate because both kind of want to play their style and they're not going to change too much. But I also am interested in Inter getting that quarter of a goal because I feel like it might climb to a half by the time this kicks off. And I feel like there's a very good chance that Benfica sees a 1-1 or goalless result late in the match and think we're not going to risk potentially overexposing ourselves. We can still go to Milan, go to San Siro and win. So I really like the under 2.25. That's probably my favorite bet on this one, but also like the quarter of a goal on Inter Milan. And I feel like if they climb both on side or on the two advanced number, that's where you should be interested moving forward. Next, we'll go to Manchester City hosting Bayern Munich. Luckily, fortunately, the only other match on Tuesday, of course, they start at the same time, couldn't stagger them just to really make our lives easier, but it is what it is. Manchester City currently a 3/4 goal favorite at home. Over under is 2.75, choose heavily the over. We might see a 3 by the time this pops up. I think that makes sense based on Bayern Munchen's ability to score, their questions defensively. I do think Thomas Tuchel is going to help them, and he's had success with facing Manchester City in the past. I mean, you don't have to look too much further than this competition when his Chelsea side, pretty big underdogs in Porto, if I remember correctly, beating Manchester City for the Champions League title. Chelsea has certainly fallen apart since he left the season, but careful what you wish for when you sack managers. Two advanced number, currently Man City minus 185 to move through. $185 wins you 100. Bayern a plus 155 underdog, so $100 bet will win you 155. In terms of where this has moved, Manchester City were only a minus 140 favorite on April 2nd. So this has climbed considerably. I got it 25% higher. So it's basically a quarter more expensive than it was before. That makes me interested in Bayern, but ultimately this is a really tough first leg for them. I think we've seen Bayern as not exactly on the same level, certainly doesn't spend as much as Man City does, but both these teams want to play aggressively. They both want to play with a high line. They want to attack you. I don't know necessarily that Manchester City are a team I want to fade right now, but they haven't really looked as strong as they had entering this competition. I mean, I think eons ago, way back in the year of our Lord 2022, Manchester City looked like the best team, and I feel like PSG were a very close second, maybe 1A, 1B. Bayern Munich were generally, I think, rated a higher, more likely team to advance. I think because when you thought about knockouts, PSG could not face anybody from France, but there wasn't really anybody left. Whereas Bayern would potentially avoid Borussia Dortmund, and that would help them in kind of who they were playing the next rounds. But ultimately, I don't even know that necessarily means too much. But Bayern were always a pretty close second to Manchester City in terms of, I guess, second most likely to win the Champions League behind Manchester City, but still suggests that they'd be pretty competitive. And ultimately, I feel like this is a tough one to go. If you're going to back Bayern, you're going to hope they outscore Man City. I think that correlates to an overplay here, over 2 3/4. Feels a little bit low for these two teams, but also Champions League things get a lot tighter for sure. I think my biggest interest in this matchup is probably the Bayern getting 3/4 of a goal, just because they're so rarely an underdog. I think I'm probably waiting for a +1 if I can get it. I'm not sure that I will before this kicks off, but I feel like under is too hard to play with these two teams. I feel like in these type of competitions and cup competitions, underdogs and unders are really God's gift to the world. I feel like it's a lot more difficult, I think, to win those type of plays in domestic play. But I think in the international, it's a really great spot to be, especially if we're talking international, like World Cup play. I guess I should use continental here. But I'm interested in Bayern. I want to see if it climbs to 1. I doubt it will do that. Just tracking where this number has gone so far. Opened as Bayern, a half a goal underdog, has climbed to 3/4. I think it's too big of a lift to see it hit +1 by the time this kicks off tomorrow or today, this afternoon. But I'm interested there as well. I think my best bet for Tuesday, I'm going to give Inter Milan under 2.25 as my best bet. So moving to Wednesday, we have AC Milan hosting Napoli. Very interesting matchup. Two Italian teams. I hate that they're playing each other, but I guess it'd be too difficult to continue having rules that teams can't play each other. I would hope until the final. But ultimately, I guess that would potentially put an unfair, potentially unbalanced type of schedule if you could essentially also would put a lot of teams from the same countries if they couldn't play until the final, if they were the two best ones potentially playing there. Anywho, AC Milan currently a pick'em at home with almost all the juice on Napoli on the road. Over unders 2.25, juice to the over. Kind of interesting to see this, especially because AC Milan just smacked Napoli around, I think won 4-0 only a couple weeks ago. Napoli have been dealing with a ton of injuries. Unfortunately, they look like the team that could not be stopped, but suddenly they could when they started getting players that were missing, unfortunately, and really important ones like Victor and Osimhen. Napoli still have a lot there, but ultimately as a road favorite, I feel like that's not something I'm really interested in this world. I love home dogs. I don't know that Napoli are really the same team right now. They've really struggled. I mean, they played a lot of their best players in, I believe it was Friday's match because of the Easter holiday. There's a lot of Italian Serie A matches. They didn't play at all on Sunday. I guess they're still a believer in Catholicism, Christianity, things of that nature, unlike the rest of the heathens in this world. But I think Napoli certainly haven't looked like the team they were, and they really are impaired based on injury. So that's a pretty tough place to be. AC Milan opened when I first tracked this as a quarter goal underdog, which is what I made it. Then fell to a pick'em, which I guess we're bet to a pick'em. That's a respectful thing. And then it seems like that money has continued to flow in. I feel like Milan is the side I'd want here. Over under at 2.25. It's hard to say because Napoli have been scoring so many goals. AC Milan certainly have a lot of goals in them. Though Milan got to this stage by really shutting out Tottenham in 2 different legs. So I do feel like there's some defense that we can trust there. Napoli's offense has been much better than Tottenham, and they have a much better strategy. I'll put it that way. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know how I feel about the Tottenham strategy. But in terms of the 2 advanced numbers, haven't moved that much actually. AC Milan were initially a 170 underdog, so $100 winning 170. They've only dropped to 165, which I mean the numbers moved a fair amount for the total, or excuse me, for the side in this first leg. So I feel like there's some value there. Might want to look at that a little bit more closely. Only dropped 3% considering all the injuries. Definitely want to see lineups and what that looks like. But if there are players still missing for Napoli, I think I'm going to be even more interested in AC Milan to advance here potentially. It feels like a pretty big number and a good chance that at home they have a good first leg result. and you could potentially hedge on the other side. Hedging is sort of for gardeners, in my humble opinion, but certainly there are ways to make money doing it. So it's something maybe you might want to look into if you're that type of player. In terms of, I guess, the total, it's been 2.25 this whole time, maybe climbed to 2.5, but was very juicy. The unders back to 2.25. Another thing with lineups, I really need to see who Napoli is starting, because Kvaratskhelia, he did play this weekend, but Osimhen, so important in their offense, has not really been seen at all from what I've seen. I don't have a status on him, whether he's going to play or not, but we'll see on Wednesday. Milan have been playing better. And ultimately, that's the side I like at home, because I think there's going to be a big crowd behind them for this one, as of course you'd expect in the Champions League quarterfinals. Last but not least, on Wednesday, we have Real Madrid hosting Chelsea. Currently, Real Madrid, a 3/4 goal favorite at home with almost all the juice, or a little bit more of the juice. Over-under is 2.5, juice the under. Currently, Chelsea's a team I want to bet against. They are... See the movement in this one. So they opened, Chelsea did a half a goal underdog on the road at the Bernabeu in Madrid, have climbed since then from pretty much split juice -110 each way to plus money on a half of a goal underdog. And then I don't think I've updated this since the firing until I looked today, but ultimately Graham Potter gone. Frank Lampard, who clearly didn't look up to the job, is back because they were panicked and really had no idea what to do, and probably couldn't get anyone that wanted to show up. There's big problems at Chelsea. So how do you back them? I'm not sure. I do feel like if there's anything that I'm interested in, it's probably that under 2.5. It feels a little bit large to me, considering Chelsea can't really score goals, and we know that Real Madrid doesn't exactly have the easiest time scoring themselves. Real Madrid have looked better, but they're not really they're not competing for La Liga anymore. They have been a Champions League darling, though their play hasn't really deserved it all the time. So it's really hard to say that Real Madrid deserve this big of a price, but they are facing a team in crisis. So I don't think we can blame them or the market for putting this here. It does feel to me that 2.5 is kind of big for this matchup, though. That one's been coming down, actually getting more over money hitting, which I can't really explain based on anything. Anytime Chelsea plays, I'm amazed that people want to play under or play anything but under. Betting against them sometimes doesn't work out because there's such a big divide between them and the rest of La Liga, ultimately, besides Barcelona and some of the other teams that are actually competing for Champions League. But I never feel like there's a lot of goals in Real Madrid matches until late. It's hard to keep hitting overs when it's 0-0 for the first half or 1-0 until the 75th minute. They happen, but they're not something that I don't think will continue to happen forever, or I'll probably be broke and pissed off. But Chelsea's defense, I think, is something we have been able to trust. I don't know that we can trust it as much right now in their current state, but their offense is not scary to me. Joao Felix is a great player, but he cannot finish chances very well, and he's their best finisher. Kai Havertz is just incredible. Really, the whole team is incredible at putting the ball into the stands, because unfortunately the net is where they're targeting. Maybe they should aim for the stands. That might help them out a little bit better. As for the two advanced numbers in this one, if I could get my computer to respond. So Real Madrid were a -175 favorite April 2nd when I first started tracking this. They're now -220, a climb of nearly 20%. In terms of the marketplace expectations on Chelsea. Chelsea have moved from +145 to +180. Pretty gigantic number. If you're a believer in value, so you could probably argue that Chelsea deserves it, but I don't see it. I think my best bet for Wednesday for this match will be Chelsea under 2.5. I think my best bet, I mean, I'm still pretty interested in AC Milan, I got to say, but at Pick'em, I'm not sure I'm there. I think if it climbed to a quarter, it probably means Napoli's best players are in, and that also will impact my interest in this one. I do think that that Napoli are not the same team right now, and AC Milan have a chance to pull an upset, but we'll see what happens and really who's available for that match. But I think Chelsea under 2.5 will be my best bet for Wednesday. So now it's time to, I guess I'll get the plugs in there. So if you're not yet a subscriber on Patreon, join the community. I think we have 5 people so far that are in. Appreciate, of course, all of you for all the support and all that stuff going forward. But I honestly think it's a great value, especially if you're a pregame subscriber. You might want to look into there, diversifying what you can look for. Get all my picks all in the same place at a much more affordable price. But check that out. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a 5-star review. I'll read it if it's great or not great. If it's criticized, criticisms are fine, whatever you want. Also got plenty of podcast stuff coming out through pregame as well, with my MLB pod coming out with Scott Seidenberg twice a week, Sunday nights, Thursday nights for Monday and Friday cards. Keep that in mind. But this is betting the pitch number 184 with the real underscore G Warner on Twitter and Instagram. For my best bets and for the ultimate best bet for this show, I'm most interested in the Inter Milan under 2.25 and Chelsea under 2.5 for this week's Champions League quarterfinals. And for my best bet, I'm going to go with Inter under 2.25. I just feel like this is the first match on Tuesday. Both Benfica and Inter Milan, I think they're going to both be surrendering the ball to the other team. That's not a great situation for goals being scored. I think Inter have been playing so poorly in Serie A that they really need a good result here. And I feel like they might kind of like cling to their defense a little bit more than you expect. I think Benfica know that they are the lower budget team here. I think they see that this is an important place for them to get a good result, but I do feel like if Benfica go up 1-0, they're going to hold on for dear life and try to keep that advantage to go to San Siro. Inter Milan, I think, are just going to try to keep Benfica from scoring. I don't think they're going to put too much into scoring goals themselves. So play under 2.25 for Inter Milan at Benfica. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch number 184. Thank you for all the support, everyone that's been there. Please like, subscribe, do whatever you can. Hit me up on the real underscore G Warner on Patreon, also Twitter, Instagram, wherever it is. It's an awful handle, my bad, but it's what I got. It's what I'm using. So have a great night. We'll talk to you very early in the morning. Now it's time to handicap baseball card, and then eventually, maybe someday, I will go to sleep like a normal human being. But anyway, thanks so much for the support. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging in here, and let's win some money.